Hello, everybody. This is Trina Gunzel, and welcome to another episode of the Legacy and Legends podcast. We are just sharing so much love this month, and in this Light the World series, you're meeting a lot of cool people from around the globe. So I'm so excited to introduce you to another guest. I hope you will grab a cup of tea or cocoa or coffee, whatever you're doing, and snuggle up, and you're going to hear another amazing story to inspire and encourage you no matter where you are. So I'm so excited to introduce you to my next guest today. I'm going to really just open the stage for you and let you introduce yourself. Tell us where you're checking in from, and then we'll ask you a couple of questions to get started, okay?
Amazing. So I'm Ahuva Hershkop. I'm checking in from Toronto, Canada. I am an intuitive eating dietitian turned burnout coach for working moms. Also the proud mom of 3 kiddos under 6. So lots going on. I really love being able to just show up and support, the women that I work with in going from what I call the working mom hustle culture, where they find themselves having zero time, zero support, but feeling like they need to give 100% at home and 100% at work, whatever it is that they're doing, and find themselves burning out in the process and blaming themselves for their burnout. And I coach them on how to step out of the working mom hustle culture and start enjoying their lives again without compromising on how they show up in the world or their professional goals.
I love this so much. You were speaking all my love language because especially when you said the dietitian type 1 diabetic mama, Oh my gosh, I was like, please, there's no way. I don't subscribe to the grind mentality at all. And haven't you noticed it? So many people now, just a short on this, but we see these people come out big and they're doing all these things, and then they literally disappear because they've either had a stroke, heart attack, literally their health just was compromised so much.
Or they don't care anymore. They're like, I can't keep on doing it like this. Like, I'm just out.
Yeah. So true. So I'm so excited you're going to talk about this topic. And I know there's probably a really juicy story in there of how you even got into this. So I'm going to turn the stage over. Let us know your story, like how you made it through, because people love to be inspired learning from others. That's how we really can accelerate the learning, right? Not everyone has to go through it if you can learn through someone else's journey.
I always say I did it. I've read all the books. I've read thousands of books. I've done thousands of hours of coaching. I've done the lived experience. I've hit the wall of burnout also that my clients don't have to, and so that we can turn the car around before they hit the wall. So I, had 3-year-old twins. I found out that I was pregnant the week before the COVID lockdown. So right before the whole world shut down, and was coaching my pediatric nutrition clients during that time. And really, as I was, working with my clients, raising my 3-year-old twins, delivered a baby, and went back to work 6 days later so that I wouldn't lose momentum in my nutrition business. So I was coaching clients while I was, holding, literally, breastfeeding a baby. And was just hearing from my clients again and again and again, being like, especially with everything, they were already experiencing and lockdown life, being like, we wish that we could care about the things that you're saying. And also we're so up to hear that, like, if my child wants to go take a sugar bag out of the cupboard and like pour it down their throat for dinner, we'll call that a win. We'll just call that them being fed, right? Like, we don't care. Like, we're just so done. And like any good clinician or like anyone, I would hope would react the same way, being like, it's not really super helpful for me to keep on just ramming their, recommendations down their throat that they can't possibly actually act on because they're just so burned out. And I was just seeing so much of myself in my clients as well. And through my own, taking that step back and asking myself, like, can I really sustain this for the next 30, 40, 50 years of my career?
Sure.
The answer was definitely a no. And so that caused, a lot of introspection in myself, a lot of research, a lot of learning, a lot of understanding of what leads to burnout, how we actually find ourselves there, how we can change habits. Like, what does it actually look like on a practical level to change neural pathways, to change how we approach things? And then started supporting my clients in, how do we do that? Right. So that we're not constantly operating at this, like, oh my God, I'm so stressed up to here that if one more thing happens, everything is going to come crashing down.
That is really interesting. You brought up a couple of very specific words. Number one, I love lockdown life. That should be a book. If it's not already, I'm like, everyone can relate to that.
You're like immediately trademarking.
And then the idea of this preventative, like, I think a lot of people that have major health complications, honestly, with burnout, or like you said, just quit, it's
Yeah.
they don't see it coming.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you agree? Like, what causes it when I'm wanting to see and just understand from that mom point of view, were they working at home and with their kids and now trying to homeschool? And was it just too much or
Yeah. I think that it's really, I mean, I think it was everything just almost like with the volume turned up, right? It was
yeah.
parenting with the volume turned up. It was working with the volume turned up. Well, we were also, a lot of people were so grateful to be able to do remote learning and remote
Mhm,
working and all of that. It also turned the volume up on like there not being any distinction between all the things that we were doing.
mhm,
And I think that especially for women and especially for women who do have children, this isn't exclusively to mothers and it's not even
yeah,
exclusively to women, but that is those are the people that I generally am speaking to, is for people who are constantly feeling pulled between doing it all. When they're at
mm,
home, they feel guilty they should be working. When they're working, they feel guilty they should be being a better mom. It
yeah,
was the volume turned up on, you were constantly making the choice between what hat am I putting on right now? And it was like this
mhm,
constant, like, switching 10 million times throughout the day
yeah.
that was just leading to complete burnout.
I believe it. Well, and I think a lot of people, if they were used to having like their set routine, right? And they
Yeah.
had, this is when the kids are there, this is my quiet time at work, this
Yeah.
is my health time, this is meals, and they don't have that. And it's just all
Totally.
jumbled and people are scrambling. Like, what do we do? Not to mention the isolation that
Yeah.
happened with that whole
Well, the
lockdown.
village was taken away, right?
There you
So
go.
sometimes there's a lot of those band-aids where we're like, when we
Yeah.
assume that we can't handle it all because we're supposed, all of those I want to say social structures, but I don't mean it from like a government sense. I mean, it's sort of like in, your mom being able to lend a hand, or your mother-in-law, or your friend down the street, all of that got taken away. So it really was that, and that's it.
Yeah. Yeah. So did you have a pivotal moment in your story where you were just like, this can't continue. Like, I have to shift this, and what happened that made it where now you're doing that for others?
It really was just me being able to suddenly ask myself that question. Like, I can't even remember exactly what was happening when I asked that question, but it was, can I keep on going like this? Right?
Mm,
And it really was, do I want to keep on going like this?
yeah,
And um just understanding the what I had been resisting for so long, which was when I don't coach on weight loss, but
uh-huh,
the thing that a lot of my, dietitian friends will say for anyone who is trying to explore weight loss is the way that you lose weight, the things you do to lose weight are the things you're going to have to do to maintain the weight loss,
that's
right?
right.
And so it all sort of just started clicking of the way that you build a business, the way that you build a life are the things that you're going to have to do to maintain it.
Mhm,
And I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions is so many women, myself included, are like, okay, I just have to, graduate school. I just have to do really well in school. I
mhm,
just have to get the job. I just have to get the, like eventually get married and settle down. Kids. Okay, so it's not the kids, so it's the mortgage. It's the
mhm.
house. And it's okay now, so I have the mortgage, and then we keep on just sort of moving the goalpost.
Yeah,
And eventually, you get to a place where you're like, I'm hustling even harder now than I
mhm,
ever did before. I accomplished all these things that I thought was going to allow me to relax or was
yeah,
going to allow me to enjoy my life. And I'm hustling even harder now to maintain, right? I'm
yep,
in like the maintenance phase of the diet and
uh-huh,
I'm, hustling even harder now to maintain it. And so just recognizing that all of those things that we build, the way that we build is the way that we're going to eventually have to maintain or
mhm.
grow, but also maintain. And that was really the question is, does this seem like something that I want to choose to maintain? And if not,
Ye
then what needs to happen?
That's awesome. And you brought up something that hit me so hard was, like, always having that goalpost move out.
Hmm.
That feels like you never are actually winning. Like, you're
Yeah.
never actually getting to have the goal, and I have a couple friends, they're literally like celebration specialists,
Yes.
where it's like every day, find something to celebrate every day, because if you don't look at the gift today is, that is just a recipe for disaster, because
And I
you
think
won't ever reach fulfillment, right? There's no
that
peace.
that's one of the most common things that women specifically do because when we're
Mhm.
looking for that external validation, right? When we never learn how to cultivate the self-trust and learn how to cultivate the confidence even to create our own validation, you're
Mhm.
constantly looking for something else to give it to you. So you got the
Yep.
promotion or your kid didn't throw the fit in the grocery store, even though like 2 weeks ago they did, right? It's like all those things that
Mhm.
someone in the grocery store tells you that you're a good mom because your child is like nicely sitting in the cart. and you're like, okay, I'm a good mom for 1 second. Okay. And then 3 hours later, you're like, oh, I feel like a failure again. Right. Or you get a big client, or you get the job that you want, depending on if you're an entrepreneur and an employee, and you're like, okay, I made it. And then you're like, I still feel like crap. Oh my gosh. Like, it's just that. And so you're like, hey, it clearly wasn't that thing. Maybe I should just move on to something else, or maybe it'll be the next promotion. And eventually we have to get to the point where we're like, it's not going to be any of those things, right? You can find, and you hear millionaires and you hear actors talk about this all the time, that moment of reckoning almost when you've won, I was going to say the Grammys, which clearly shows you how much I know about actors because that's music, an Oscar, or you get a main character role or whatever, or you have, $50 million in the bank, and you're like, oh, so I'm still the same unhappy person that I was before, right? And I think that a lot of people, it might not be the $50 million in the bank, but it might be just the getting the promotion where you're like, cool, it wasn't that thing.
Oh yeah, I'm so aligned with that. I mean, there's our whole program, like we help people figure out their actual purpose and then create a life around it as consultants, because I have a lot of miserable millionaires who come in and they're like, I made the money, but I forgot to make a life, or I never did the thing I wanted to do. Like I got so busy with this. And you're right. Like kid responsibilities and financial, you can just be running in your whole life. You never stop to like enjoy the sunset, or you're running. Did you miss the beautiful lake you were running by? Right.
Yeah. There's a parable that's in one of my favorite books, which is called Bittersweet by Susan Cain. If anybody's never read it, they definitely should. But it talks about, it's an old parable that's called like the fisherman and the businessman or something like that. And it's like, a businessman comes and sees a fisherman and he's like lounging on his boat in the sunshine. He's like, what are you doing? You should be up working. He's like, why? He's like, so you can earn more money. He's like, why? He's like, so you can hire other people. Why? So that they can fish instead of you. It's like, why? So that you can eventually go on vacation and lounge in the day in the sunshine. And he's like, what do you think I'm doing right now, though? Right. And I think that I call it in my program, I run a 12-week program for women on how to actually enjoy their lives. I call it the joy of self and the joy of self-development, right? Because so often we spend there's that joy and fulfillment that people get from constantly trying to build and constantly trying to work on themselves and constantly being like, I could be better at this area, or I could work on myself in this area. But we forget about the joy of self, right? Like just the joy of, okay, let's stop working for a second. Let's not go on to the next goal. And let's just like sit in this one for a little bit, right? Like, let's just lounge on the seaside in your boat instead of trying to work even more just because you want to actually just enjoy your life now.
Yeah, that's right. And that's such a good point, because it's like, at what point is it enough? Like, can you be happy with where you are today? Because to me, it's like, it flows from that. If you can be happy with your life right now, then okay, if you add more abundance or more clients or more trips, it's great. But can you be happy with where you are today?
Yeah.
I love that. I love what you're doing. And so tell us, when you would talk about like, who would an ideal client be for you, so people can know if they're listening to this, they're probably resonating with a lot of these keywords you said. Let me know a little bit more about that. And then literally what result can they expect from you? And then how could they get in touch with you?
Yeah. So I work a lot with people who are, what identify as perfectionists, type A women. I tend to say that I work with exactly like moms or moms to be, people who are sort of family oriented. So whether or not you actually have kids right now, one of the clients that I'm working with, so the program that I run is called the Unapologetic Living Code. It's a 12-week program to really decondition from what I call the working mom hustle culture, which again is whether or not you're a mom, the way that we view women of having to, show up 100% for everyone around them, having to show up 100% for their careers and just hustle without the time or support to do that, and really learning how to enjoy their lives again. One of my clients, who actually is someone who was wanting a family and was very resistant to doing IVF. She was having some fertility challenges and was like, I don't want to do IVF. I just don't want to. And actually through our coaching, we came to recognize that it was her perfectionism that didn't want her to do IVF. Because if she failed, if it didn't work, that would feel like a huge failure for her, right? And so at the end of 12 weeks, she's happily starting a first round of IVF. just recognizing that she doesn't have to view herself as a failure. She can take it as it comes.
Yeah.
And so whether it's being able to, you know, have another client who's an entrepreneur and was feeling super stuck in creating a course for herself because, you know, I want it to be perfect and I want it to be beautiful and I want it to be $1 million launch the first time. And, you know, all of those things. And so really just understanding where a lot of those, that hustle culture, that like constant sprint, that constant, I have to do all of the things and it has to be perfect, shows up for various clients, and especially for people who are socialized as women.
Yeah.
And so those are really the results that we're after. And it's really sort of almost like a coming back to, what do I want my life to look like? And even if you think you know the answer, there might be some sneaky thoughts in there that are just sort of you building the life that you think you're supposed to have.
Yeah. And it is a real, if my husband made me a treat, I'm totally accepting this. I was so excited. He makes, thank you. It makes me like the special breakfast. I love you. Thank you.
Yum.
Like, yeah. Thanks, John. That's my awesome husband. Perk of working with your husband. He makes me this super special. I've been doing this like keto drink. It's amazing. So I'm just having a sip. Sorry, I gotta. That's awesome. I told him, I'm like, okay. He goes, if you're doing a podcast, can I come in and bring it to you? I'm like, yes.
You're like, bring me two, actually. Yes.
One
totally.
for my guests too. We need one.
Totally. Exactly.
Okay. Yes. Well, I am really glad that you shared all that, because this even that, okay. My husband knows, like for me, this self-care thing is something I'm not willing to compromise anymore. I did it in the past. I literally almost burned myself out to the point of like, I don't even want to touch my business anymore. I don't care how successful it is. I was just like, I need disconnection. I love people, and I peopled myself out. I was like, wow, I need recharge space. And it's just different, right? Of being like, yes, you have healthy boundaries, and also knowing when enough is enough and being able to celebrate. But for me, the more I've taken off my plate, where I'm like, okay, instead of 5 or 10 calls, I'm doing 2 calls a day. That's it. And once in a while I can squeeze in a VIP, but having that boundary for myself allows me to go, now I can walk. My sweet spot is 10 to 12. You know what I mean? Like just putting those in. I respect so much what you're doing, because it's so needed. And as a type A perfectionist mom who's really struggled with the, like, I want it to be perfect, but like the expectations that not only society puts on it, but we put on ourselves.
Well, I actually just posted this in response to, you know, Rihanna at the Super Bowl, right? So many posts that find the people who are like, she didn't even dance, whatever. You guys can sit in the corner because she did the Super Bowl while pregnant. But, you know, the people who are like, that's what you can do while pregnant. Like, look at this, what people can do while pregnant. And I posted yesterday and was like, I just hope that in this new narrative of look what people can do while pregnant, we remember that it's one woman who made it one choice that worked well for her. And this is not a new, you know, as you're saying, like the standard that all women who are supposed to meet while they're pregnant, right? Because that's what happens so often is we see this one person, and, you know, I go off on this all the time about bento box style lunches for kids at school. It was one person who wanted to send little cute cutout sandwiches to their child and that's great. You want to do that? You do you, right? Like by all means. But the problem is exactly all those standards that we feel like we're supposed to meet, and then we beat ourselves up instead of meeting them, when the reality is like the standard is make sure your kid has food. That's right. Like that's the standard. It doesn't have to be a beautiful catered lunch, like with a waiter to serve it.
Right. You know what? You're right though. And that's the thing of comparison is the thief of joy, right? Where it's like, okay, not only do you have to work full time and bring in X amount for your family, you're also still supposed to cook, clean, do laundry, make sure your kids have cute clothes, have great intimacy, like all these things where it's to the point of like, is this even possible for anybody? You know, the first thing, especially when you start making enough where you can give yourself a little break, like get someone to help you with your house cleaning or something. What things can you take off your plate? Because while I do pride myself on being a superwoman too, part of that is like laying down the cape and realizing we're all human, and you cannot go 24/7 and live. Honestly, you will crash and burn.
And especially for people who are entrepreneurs who are hearing also like that you're supposed to be able to do it all at home and like make the this and make the dinner and the lunch and also you're supposed to have like a $3 million launch in 30 days. That's super easy, like right off the bat. And you're supposed to be able to be like perfect at it right away. And everyone is a self-made millionaire within the first 6 months of starting their business. And for a lot of people that I'm, working with who happen to be either, in corporate spaces and or entrepreneurs, like those are all of the messages that they're getting. The ones that I heard when I was starting my business also of like, if you're not a millionaire in 30 days, you're doing it wrong.
And it's such garbage. I mean, the sad part is calling that stuff out like you're doing, which I love your work because it's so needed. Because when they say that, it's like you're seeing the victory that came after years of learning and struggles. And my big thing I've seen over and over and over is like the marketing key. These people who go out and 10 years in the making, overnight millionaire or whatever. It's like they had so much marketing experience, or they went bankrupt, or they failed, or they had these crazy, horrible life experiences. And then they're just showing the front side, the good, which nobody has a perfect life. Like everybody goes through challenges, which I think is why people are loving this series so much. Because they're like, it's real. I don't blur anything. You're in my actual space. These are my real notebooks. But I want it to be real where it's like, I don't edit it because people need real and they can hold on to and go, oh, wow, if you've struggled with that. And that's why I try to share, and embed these stories too. Then there's always someone who can help you. But I love that you're standing in that space because it's dangerous. And I think that's why so many divorces, right? So many early deaths. We have lost so many people. I'm only 46 and there's so many people out of my class who are already passed away. And it's crazy how young, when our grandparents lived into their 90s,
Yeah. Yeah. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. So what do you, if someone is like, oh my gosh, they're hearing this today, maybe they're struggling with burnout right now. Maybe they're resonating with all the things you've said of like, I got to get some things off my plate. I need to change this thinking or I'm going to burn out. You're in that prevention space, which I love. What's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
So I'm actually hosting a workshop next week on why the goal of work-life balance is actually burning women out. So, if you're hearing this before February 21st, you can definitely join me there. I hang out lots on Instagram. My handle is Ahuva Hershkop. It's AHUVA HERSHKOP. And I run a free Facebook community called Beyond Burnout with Ahuva Hershkop, where it's, 2,500 other women who are really committed to changing some things in their lives, so that they can get to enjoy their lives now and still have, all the fun and amazing impact that they want to be able to have.
I love it so much. And you're so aligned with our Women in Power group. You're welcome in there. It's literally inspirational. We have speaking events. It's a lot of fun. It's all about the power is present, overachieving women, ensuring results. And it's literally to get the order in of faith or God, whatever you believe in. And then it's self-care, family, work, and then all the other things. Because otherwise, just a recipe for disaster. So we will include all the links, the comments, everything in the description below, as well as, so our listeners, you'll be really easily able to click on these. I'm going to move this up the list because your upcoming workshop to get you now in instead of May. So I'm going to up this so that people can jump in, because I really am promoting self-care as a speaker this month too. So we'll bump you up the list. And thank you for being my guest today. It was an absolute pleasure to meet you. And I can't wait to keep building our relationship. I really believe in what you're doing.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. All right, everybody. Thanks for being here, and we'll see you on the next episode.